You are live.
Well, thank you. Everybody does look their best. We start with a roll call, please.
Yes, that's Counselor Cassett. Here. Counselor Lindell.
Here.
Counselor Villarreal.
Present.
Counselor Rivera. And Counselor Romero-Worth.
Excused.
We have
Thank you.
quorum.
Do we have any changes for the agenda from staff?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
For approval?
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are down to approval of the minutes.
No changes from staff.
Move to approve.
Did we skip the consent agenda?
We did, but we'll come right back to it.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Do I need a roll call on that? Okay, roll call, please.
Or you can, if there's, everybody's in approval, then
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of the consent agenda. Councilor Rivera.
Item Q and R.
Q and R. Okay, anyone else? Councilor Villarreal?
Also Q.
Okay.
Also Q.
The QQQ. All right, and the chair will remove item A.
Move for approval as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. We have an introduction of legislation. Mayor Weber is not here, so I'll go ahead and read the caption on that. It's a resolution relating to a request for approval of fourth quarter budget amendments and associated New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration / local government division. Schedule for fiscal year 2021 / 2022. Presentations. Audit update. Mr. Bejarano.
Madam Chair, before we get started on that, back to the introduction of legislation, I see that it's not scheduled to come back to finance. Is that because of timing issues, or should it come back to finance since it's budget amendments?
Counselor, I'm sorry, I can't address that. I don't know the answer to it. Maybe someone from finance can?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I would like to ask Andy Hopkins to address that question. If we could do it, could we possibly do it after the presentation? Would that be okay? Because he's in the building. I'm not sure where he's at the moment.
Well, how about, yeah, if there's not a timing issue, then it would be nice for it to come back to this committee, but if there is, it can stay the way it is. It was just
I believe it's a timing issue, but I would like to have Andy Hopkins
okay.
address it.
Great.
Is that satisfactory, Counselor? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Bejarano?
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. You'll be happy to know this will be very brief. The latest update is that we did submit timely the Gantt chart, or I think a tracking document that the Office of the State Auditor requested. We submitted it to the Department of Finance and Administration State Auditor, and it was submitted by our contractor at CLA, so that if there were any additional items that were needed, they could be pulled from the hundreds of items that are in the in the REDW, link. And so far, all we've received back is an email from the state auditor's office that they wanted a couple of days to look it over, and then that they possibly would start requesting actual items. So we're waiting for that. The only other bit of news is that, I think I announced this last time, but this is definite, that CLA will not conduct the 21 audit, and that is for certain. With that, I stand for questions.
It looks like no one has any questions for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving along. We have two items that are pulled, actually three. I pulled item A. Is there anybody here that can speak to that? Looks like it. Good afternoon. I just have a couple of very, very quick questions. Welcome. Could you remind this committee who the members of the committee are that make this determination and these recommendations to council?
Yes, absolutely, Councilor Lindell and Finance Committee members. So the Human Services Committee is made up of 7 volunteers, 7 constituents, all with different expertise from across the city, from behavioral health to health, human services, all the way through, oh my gosh, I'm like totally blinking because there's, oh, that's right, evaluation, other mental health services. I have the program manager who oversees the Human Services Committee here who can talk a little bit more about their expertise.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Krista Hernandez, and so as Julie mentioned, we have several committee members that have varying levels of education experience in evaluation and behavioral health. We have someone who was a former director with Department of Health, so she oversaw the Office of Policy and Accountability. And we have someone from Presbyterian Health Services, so she oversees community health within the hospital.
Could you speak a little more into
I'm
the
sorry.
mic? Thank
We
you.
have someone from Presbyterian Health Services, so she oversees community health within the hospital. A clinician who works for the Indian Health Service, Santa Fe Area Service Area in Santa Fe. And our newest member who has extensive experience with behavioral health, mental health, and Medicaid treatments, policy around behavioral health as well.
Okay. And that's the committee, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me how often they meet?
They meet every other month throughout the year.
So they meet 6 times a year.
Yes.
Does staff think that that's enough? Is that often enough for this committee to meet? They certainly distribute a lot of funds.
They do, and they're a very active committee. I'm sure if given the opportunity to meet more frequently, I know one of the key areas they want to focus on moving forward is ways to support our grantees, to identify the challenges they're facing, to identify areas that we, the city, via the committee, can support them. So I'm sure they could be open to that.
That might be the kind of thing that we would want to, or that I would ask that you would discuss with the committee if they feel like they would be able to accomplish more if they met more than 6 times a year. I'd be curious to hear what they say about that. The other thing that I'm just a little curious about is, we have a whole bunch of these awards today on our agenda, and it seems like almost all of them are very close to the same amount. It's split up pretty evenly. I just am curious how the committee determines that nearly every organization gets just about the same amount of money. And I think we had, I forget, was it 22 applicants?
That's correct.
And 3 did not get funding. So the question is, 2 parts. Why does everyone get pretty near the same amount? I know they all have different missions. They have different size budgets and needs. And secondly, is there a common thread in why the 3 did not get funding?
And I'd be happy to elaborate on that. So we did have an evaluation process that took place with our committee members. So the scoring was based on the request for application, which they reviewed all of the applications submitted. And based on the responses, based on how thorough and comprehensive the applications were, and how those applications spoke to the questions that were asked within them, that's how some of the scoring took place. We did look at prior year funding, if these are grantees that have been funded in prior years, to determine how much funding they had received, and to give that as a starting point or baseline for consideration for future funding moving forward. Based on that, we had, I believe, 2 applications that were submitted. One was submitted late, and one was incomplete upon submission, so that's why those 2 were not funded. 2 others who were submitted, the committee felt as though they required additional planning and consultation in order to further develop the programming. So the committee was not comfortable funding them this year for a full grant amount until they further hashed out the details of the programs. Do you want to add any? Does that answer your question, Madam Chair?
Well, it certainly answers the question on why the 3 didn't get funding, but as far as the criteria for funding goes, I'm a little concerned and wonder if the process is proper, that we start with the baseline of where they were previously, and we end up with 18, 17 fundings that are all very nearly identical. I mean, in terms of budget proportion, this nearly $250 or $280-some thousand percentage-wise is probably, it varies dramatically within these organizations of what percentage of their funding it is. And I would be very cautious about having this funding be too high a proportion of their funding. You know, an organization loses this funding for whatever reason, they get it in late, whatever the reason is. And if it's a sizable percentage of their funding, that can sink an entire program. That concerns me. You know, in terms of evaluating a program, I guess I would ask if I could be emailed the application and the funding criteria, because it just seems odd to me that everybody's getting pretty near the same amount of funding. Does everybody provide us the same amount of community traction as every other application? And I'm concerned about that. So those are my questions. You're more than welcome to take those concerns back to the committee. And I'll yield the floor. Does anyone else have questions? All right, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
And Counselor Rivera? It's approved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will move on to the Qs. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, Councilor Rivera, I think you were the first to pull this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. I don't know if Terry mentioned to you the questions that I had previously regarding whether he had reached out to the major events to see how they felt about this proposal. And I know he reached out to, I believe it was IAIA, because I think they sent an email to everyone. Maybe it was just me that I can forward to everybody. Talking about their displeasure of the bill and what it meant for their event. You know if he reached out to any of the others? I don't think your mic's on, Andrea. It's on there, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Chair, Counselor Rivera, so Terry did not reach out, but Randy Randall and Mr. Mackey reached out to the events and walked the area with them. It seems that Indian Market's questions and comments were addressed with that walk around, and they're okay with the change. Their concern was about other operations having pop-ups during the event, and so the legislation does address that by only allowing leases with the city. So I believe there are no other events that have any difficulty with this moving forward.
All right, and then my other question was, are they going to be compensated in some way for the lack of square footage that they don't have now to utilize for their event? I know it's just a permit fee for the park, but the park in the past encompassed the whole area, and now there's some square footage that's going to be missing for their special event. Is that in any way being addressed?
Counselor, I don't believe there is any redress for any permit fees. I think it's the same standard permit fee.
Okay. Well, thanks for reaching out to the organizations. I thought it was important that there be communication with everyone involved with those, so I'm glad to hear that they're on board. So that's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions are along the same lines. I just wanted to make sure that there was proactive communication with the event organizers. And you said SWAYA, you all met with SWAYA. Did you meet with Spanish Market as well and the Contemporary Market?
Yes, I believe Contemporary, Fiestas, Indian Market were all met with and agreed that this ordinance could move forward.
Also Contemporary, because they're separate from Spanish Market? Just Spanish?
Just Spanish.
Last year, Contemporary Market had some issues with the space requirements, and I think you all should reach out to them too, because I think it's just so they understand that these are specifically related to restaurant parklets. It's not to pop-ups. It's not for new potential businesses that want to do something. It's officially, you're saying that their official leases that are already in place will be honored, correct, for these events?
Councilor Villarreal, yes. The leases that we have with existing restaurants, and I believe there are 4, there might be 5, those are the leases that will be honored, the ones that have been signed and executed.
So I would request to meet with Contemporary Market organizers so they understand, so that when we get to the date, which is coming up soon, that they're not surprised. So I guess my question is similar. I was thinking that because there were certain spots that folks wouldn't be able to set up booths, that we would allow for extensions of spaces elsewhere without charging them for extra space. And I don't know if you all came up with some kind of resolution so that they're feel comfortable that the spaces they don't get, that they could move them somewhere else without having to pay extra for, I don't know what that layout looks like necessarily, but do you all have any information about how you kind of came to some kind of resolution with them?
Counselor Villarreal, I do not have any information, but maybe Mr. Mackey does, and I will step aside.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal. When we walked over the plaza with the Indian market, they had some problems with, they said they were going to lose 14 booths. But we were able to address a lot of those and get it down to 3, so they were happy with that compromise. This year is going to be how it is. Next year, a resolution will address the needs that they had.
And so, let's see, was Barbara with you all to walk that?
Mr. Randall had a separate conversation with Barbara and also Geronimo on how we can address those. So we came up with a resolution with them as well. And also talked about the concerns that Swaya had.
Yeah, I think just so everybody's on the same page, Barbara really needs to know.
She's
So,
been part of the conversation.
okay, because having different conversations and then everybody not being on the same page will create problems for us, for the city.
That's one thing we found out while having these conversations with Swaya, and there's a lot of misinformation, so we're trying to bring that together.
Yes, there usually is. I just want us as staff to make sure we know what's allowable, that we're not charging them extra unnecessarily for booth permits because they're losing spaces. And so you met with Swaya, you met with Spanish Market.
And Fiesta.
Yes, okay, so I think the one missing is,
I'm sorry I did not reach out to Contemporary Art, but I will contact them.
yeah, I think just to make sure we cover everyone and all stakeholders, and I think that should be helpful. And reduce the grief, when we start getting up to that point. So I think, let's see, what else? I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Cassett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my questions were along the same lines, and I would just request that you reach out to Contemporary before we have a final vote at governing body on the 27th, and make sure that any concerns they have, that we can look for a resolution. I know similar to Spire, they were concerned about loss of booths. As Councilman Villarreal alluded to, there was a bit of misinformation about precisely where people could be utilizing the public space, so I don't know if once that information is corrected, if that will solve the problem, but definitely before 1 week from today, week and a half from today, if you guys could have that conversation and then let us know, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
And Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to,
Chair, can we move back up to the introduction briefly so Andy doesn't have to?
sure. Mr. Hopkins?
Thanks, Andy. Since this was an introduction here at Finance, I was wondering if, clearly it was done because of timeliness, but does it have to be approved before the end of July, or could this come back to the next Finance Committee and then be approved
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, this one unfortunately does have to be approved by the end of July. I had initially asked for it to be scheduled, as Councilor Romero Worth has requested in the past, that it go to 3 committees and then council, which would be Finance Committee, Quality of Life, and Public Works Committee, and then to council. But because of the short time frame between the end of the year and the lead time for getting stuff on the agenda, the city attorney requested that it be pulled from the Finance Committee agenda and rather be done as an introduction to legislation at that meeting. And then it is currently scheduled to go to Quality of Life on Wednesday, Public Works on next Monday.
All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Sorry you had to come back for that.
No problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on, we have item R, pulled by Councilor Rivera. It's a resolution authorizing the sale and consumption of alcohol during the annual burning of the Zobra community event produced by the Kiwanis Club of Santa Fe, Inc., a nonprofit organization at Fort Marcy, during the Friday of Labor Day for the years 2022 through 2025. We have Mr. Sandoval here to answer questions on this. Councilor Rivera.
Madam Chair, the first question I had was for staff. I see an FIR in this packet, which there wasn't before, but was there going to be any impact for police and fire? I don't know if anyone's communicated with them, if any additional impact because of this. I know they had it the beer garden last year, but it was quite a distance away from the park itself, so I don't know if anyone's communicated with police and fire. Okay.
Councilor Rivera. City Clerk Mihalsik is not here, so this would typically be for her to answer, but if you're comfortable having Mr. Sandoval answer, that would be fine with the chair.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Lindell, Councilor Rivera. Yes, I did speak with both the police and the fire marshal. The vendor that will run the beer garden has to be bonded and has to provide their own security. And then Kiwanis has its own security on top of that. So unless there was some sort of disturbance, police and fire do not intend to have any expenditures in that situation. If we had a fight or something where police had to go in, or if we had somebody who was causing a problem and we asked for police's help, somebody who trespassed in that situation, yes, but if everything goes well, no, it would not have.
So they're not planning on staffing additional police officers or additional fire personnel because of the beer or the alcohol consumption at the park itself?
They are not. However, we are increasing the amount of security that we have in that area, in addition to the separate security that the beer vendor has to provide as well.
And where are you planning on having this area?
So this would be just south of the gazebo and just south of the gazebo in Majors Field. So there's a natural break because of the wall against the Fort Marcy complex. So we can actually put it up against the wall so that way we have a hardened area. And then there'll be 2 fences. One will outline the beer garden, and then we'll actually have, and that'll be 8 feet. There'll be another 4 feet, so that way we can ensure that nobody can pass alcohol over to anyone.
All right, so the language itself on the resolution says at Fort Marcy, so my assumption it was going to be at the baseball field somewhere?
No, Counselor, no, under no circumstances. The baseball field, as we all know, gets very compact. And so because of the fact that you have the trees and you have the gazebo and you have the putting green, nobody can actually see the event from there. And so there's nobody that walks that way. If you think about the sidewalk that cuts Major Field in half to the east, there's nothing in the east because if we were to have an emergency exit, we need that entire pathway. But because of the fact that we have the gazebo and the putting green, it creates a natural kind of barrier, and so that's where it'll be placed. So that way it's not in anybody's viewing area, and it would be closed 30 minutes prior to lights out. So that way we could ensure that everybody was out there. We'll have light towers. They'll be shining in to make sure that they close at the right time and that there's no one in there. And the alcohol is supposed to be locked by the time that the lights go out to make sure that we don't have any shenanigans.
Madam Chair, you're one of the sponsors on this. I'm not sure if the caption needs to be changed to read Majorsfield instead of Fort Marcy, since they are two distinct areas.
We can address that, Counselor, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then just lastly, I know the number of tickets you can sell is based on the square footage and how many people can fit in there is determined by the fire department. Are you losing space because of this garden? Are you now losing the amount of people that you can, or the number of tickets you can actually sell?
No, Counselor, and the reason is because, again, nobody sits in that area. So that was actually what we've been using that space has been for a car dealership to do a car show. They provide a sponsorship. We work with parks to make sure we don't mess up the grass. And then that has been food, and so we will continue to have food in that area as well, but that does not take away from the occupancy. And again, it's because of the fact that to add that into the occupancy would be unrealistic just to inflate the numbers, because nobody would sit there or stand there because you have no line of sight.
And this is on a bit of a fast track. There was some discussion about having it for approval at our first governing body meeting in August, and there was some discussion about why it would benefit you to be sooner than that. Can you let us know what that is?
Yeah, I think that we want to make sure that, so we have to contract for the amount of porta potties that we need. Right now, porta potties are becoming a huge issue because of the fact of all the fires. So the firefighters are actually using up all the porta potties. Just to give you an example, Counselor, for 4th of July, we had a horrible time finding porta potties. They were 3 times more expensive than they would be. So we need to be able to contract for that. And again, if the beer garden is not approved, then we wouldn't add those other 13 security folks on there. And those contracts need to be signed. And that's the reason that this is. And I apologize, but we spent a lot of time looking at best practices and trying to configure this. We had conversations with the police to make sure that they were okay with the location. I don't want to in any way give the impression that the police said yes on anything. We just consulted with them to make sure that they were okay with the location.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Villarreal?
Madam Chair, just a follow-up question. Ray, if you could, you and I talked about this, the area that you were thinking of having the beer garden is next to the playground. So, but actually the gazebo's in between, well, it's kind of diagonal from it. So is that, maybe you could explain how you're going to be staying away from the playground? Because the playground stays open.
Yes, correct.
Before the event starts?
Correct. So Madam Chairman Lindell and Councilor Villarreal, so the idea is that, so our merchandise takes up the gazebo. That's actually where we have inventory. So there's a natural break between the playground and where the beer garden will go. But after talking with you, what we decided to do is that we would run black sheeting across the fence area, so that way the kids are not looking into the folks who are drinking. And it is, just to understand it, it's about 70 feet from the end of the playground to where the beer garden is. Because we have a corridor in order for us to restock our merchandise.
It's kind of a triangle, so playground's here, gazebo, and then the beer garden will be south of that.
It'll be, yes, south of that, exactly.
So the other thing was fencing. We just changed our rules to be, so they will match what the state's required in terms of fencing. So it sounds like you're still going to be doing something more stringent?
Yes.
Okay, so you said 8, did you say
So
8 feet?
8 feet is going to be the original feet, and then there'll be another 4 feet between it and a 6-foot fence there. So that way nobody can get in that corridor. And again, what we want to do, because we have so many kids at our event, we just want to make sure that nobody can hand over.
Okay. And then, yeah, my other question was about majors, but we'll have to just clarify that for future. Say for some reason you're not around.
Right.
Yeah, we just have to clarify that. And And then you said timeliness was to sign security contracts in the porta potty, just to make sure that we,
Porta potties, light towers, and security.
got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a roll call, please. Thank you, Mr. Sandoval.
Thank you. Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell?
Yes?
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera? Thank you, it's approved.
Thank you very much. We don't have an executive session. Matters from staff?
No matters from staff, Madam
Matters from the committee?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
Just one thing, I know when Ms. Dunaway started, I think there were a lot of issues, I think, with the procurement process, and she started, and I think her experience started to set us on track, but I think it was frustrating for everyone to start in compliance, and I think now that you have everything that you set up and designed as part of the procurement process, I think from staff, from just the usability point of view from everyone that's going through the process, it seems like it's gone night and day, and just wanted to give you the props for that, because I know initially it was probably driving you crazy, and we were probably driving you crazy, but just wanted to pass that along since I saw you here, so appreciate all your efforts and all your hard work.
I would echo that. You are a good trainer. You trained people.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's still a progress, but we're doing good, and following the procurement code, that's been my goal, my mission, and also building my team. I have a really good team, so, and I'm grateful for this team right here. Without them, I can't do anything, you know, for Alexis and for Ricky and Carolyn and Andy. Sorry, he's behind me. But we've become a really strong team in process and procedures, and without them, I can't do that. So I totally appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments from the matters from the committee? No matters from the chair. The next meeting is August 1st,